Բարի սելի այնակիցներ, այսօրվա թեման շատ հետաքրքիր է, որովհետև հիմնականում խոսելու է Վահան Սետյանը դոկտոր քիչ հետո, բայց ես ուղղակի ուզում եմ մի քանի բառով ձեզ ներկայացնել մեր այսօրվա երեկոյի հիմնական ծրագիրը եւ նպատակը։ Դրա համար ես ինչպես միշտ սիրում եմ կարդալ գրածս, որ ոչ իման չմոռանամ, արդեն այնքան շատ է ասելիքը եւ այնքան կարեւոր, որ չի կարելի ազատ եւ բաց խոսել։ Ես ձեզ համար կկարդամ դոկտոր Վահան Սետյանի գրածը անգլերեն եւ կթարգմանեմ հայերեն։ Dear friends, we are very pleased that you are here with us tonight and you are going to spend the next couple of hours with us and hopefully you will enjoy all that we have to say and what you have to say, and at the end of the program we will have some session for questions and answers. And what we are going to do is start with opening words of Dr. Vahan Setyan that he is trying to convey over to you. I'm going to read this in English first and I'll read it in Armenian. Equally important to revelations of ancient historical opinions and facts is the proper understanding, approach, and internalization of such opinions and facts. The latter has had less emphasis than the former, and we find it to be equally critical to examine it by and through the wealth of information we currently have at our disposal. The way we should view ancient history is as critical as what we see. And considering the prehistoric nature of Armenian history, our ability to grasp what has been known to us thus far will pave the way for greater insight, research, and investigation with more robust methods, particularly the manner we connect historical events throughout time and space. These are some tools for our tool belt to better assist us to connect and find the connectedness between various civilizations and languages. Now, I have tried to translate this very difficult English into simple Armenian. Մեր անցյալի պատմական դեպքերի եւ նրանց վերաբերյալ գոյություն ունեցող կարծիքների բացահայտման հետ համազոր կարևոր է այդ փաստերի եւ կարծիքների հասկանալն ու մոտեցումները։ Այս վերջինի վրա շատ ավելի քիչ ուշադրություն է դարձվել։ Մենք գտնում ենք, որ մեր ունեցած տեղեկությունները օգտագործելով մենք շատ ավելի խորը կարող ենք լուսաբանել այդ հարցերը։ Այն փաստը, թե մենք ինչպես, շեշտում եմ, ինչպես ենք ուսումնասիրում հնագույն պատմությունը, նույնքան կարևոր է, որքան այն, ինչ մենք տեսնում ենք։ Հաշվի առնելով հայ ժողովրդի պատմության հազարամյակների խորքից եկող բնույթը, մենք կարող ենք շատ ավելի խոր ուսումնասիրություններ կատարել եւ կապել մեր պատմության խորին անցյալը մեր ժամանակների հետ։ Նորագույն մեթոդները մեզ թույլ են տալիս գտնել տարբեր քաղաքակրթությունների եւ լեզուների միջև եղած կապը։ Բարեկամներ, ես կապնվեցի Հայաստան, Երևան եւ մեր բոլորիս բարեկամ եւ սիրված պատմական գիտությունների դոկտոր Արտակ Մովսիսյանին խնդրեցի, որ իր ողջույնի խոսքը ասի ձեզ այսօրվա երեկոյի արդիվ։ Ուրեմն Արտակ Մովսիսյանը Հայաստանի Հանրապետության ազգային գիտությունների ակադեմիայի պատմության ինստիտուտի ավագ գիտաշխատող է, Երևանի պետական համալսարանի հայ ժողովրդի պատմության ամբիոնի վարիչն է, պատմական գիտությունների դոկտոր, եւ նրան ներկայացնել կարծում եմ մի քիչ տեղին չի լինի, որտեղ բոլորը նրան ճանաչում եք, հրաշալի անձնավորություն, իսկապես նվիրյալ հայ գիտնական։ Նա մեզ ուղարկել է հետևյալ ողջույնը։ Սիրելի հայրենակիցներ, ամեն անգամ ուրախանում եմ, երբ տեղեկանում եմ, որ մեր հայրենակիցները անկախ նրանց տարիքից ու գտնվելու երկրից հավաքվել են քննարկելու իրենց մտածումների նյութը դարձնելու մեր անցած պատմական ճանապարհը։ Ուրախալի ու ոգևորիչ է դա, քանզի որքան շատ ենք մենք դասեր քաղում անցյալից, այնքան փոքրանում է մեր սխալվելու հավանականությունն ապագային միտված քայլերում։ Ի վերջո, ամեն մի նման հավաք կամ առավել ևս շարունակական բնույթ ունեցող միջոցառումների շարք ավելի է բարձրացնում մեր ազգային ինքնաճանաչողությունը, մեր ինքնության գիտակցումը։ Նման դեպքերում միակ բարեկամական խորհուրդս, որ միշտ տալիս եմ նաև ընկերներիս, բարեկամներիս, երբեք կանխակալ տրամադրվածություն չունենալ։ Հաճախ է պատահում, որ ընդունված տեսակետները ճակերտների մեջ հալածողի տեղ ընդունելով չեն ենթարկում քննական վերլուծության, մինչդեռ կարևոր է բոլոր դեպքերում պահպանելով հարգանքը նախկին հետազոտողների նկատմամբ, գնալ սկզբնաղբյուրներին եւ հետազոտությունը կատարել սկզբնաղբյուրների հիմամբ։ Պետք է հեռու մնալ նաեւ հակառակ ծայրահեղությունից, երբ մեկը չուսումնասիրելով տվյալ հարցի նախորդ հետազոտողների աշխատանքները, մեկ-երկու կիսապռատ տեղեկություն կարդալով սկսում է հայտնագործություններ անել։ Միակ ճշմարիտ ճանապարհը գիտության արդար մշակի ճանապարհն է։ Ուսումնասիրել իր հարցին առնչվող ամեն բան, երբեք կողմնապահությամբ տուրք չտալ որևէ հետազոտողի կարծիքին եւ միշտ գտնել հարցի իրական սկզբնաղբյուրը, որպեսզի պատճառների ու հետևանքների աննաչառ քննությամբ հասու լինես ճշմարտությանը։ Բարի երթեմ մաղթում ձեզ սիրելի հայրենակիցներ։ Սա հայերեն շատ կարճ թարգմանեցի անգլերեն. I have translated this into English in a very short version. Hopefully it will sound proper English. It won't be as good as the Queen's English, but I tried. Dear compatriots, as a historian, it makes me very happy to hear that Armenians, regardless of their country and their age, have gathered to discuss historical journey of our people. Every single gathering and discussion of our history elevates our self-awareness. In these cases, the only friendly advice that I can convey to you is not to have any preconceived notions or stereotypes. Try always to do your research diligently, meticulously, and always respect the work that has been done by your predecessors. Stay away from extreme and unfounded opinions. The only true and honest road through the science is to work very hard, find the accurate original sources, and try to stay devoted to the truth. I wish you all the best. Artak Movsisyan. All right, we have another friend that is an alumni of UCLA, an Armenian guy who is studying history, and he's working on his doctorate in Armenia right now, and he volunteered to send his greetings to you via email. Goebekli Nazarian, so pretty soon he will be also a doctor of history. He says, the falsifications of Armenian history began in the late 19th century during the reign of the Turkish Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II. The name Armenia was completely erased from the old Ottoman maps and replaced with the erroneous term Eastern Anatolia. During and after the Armenian genocide, the Young Turks and their Kemalist offshoots began to publish countless books which claimed that the Armenian people were not natives and thus, like the Turks themselves, were not eligible for any rights as indigenous people who were subjected to genocide, and in the process their homeland was occupied. It is not a coincidence that Kemalist General Kazım Karabekir, who occupied most of Armenia and destroyed the independent Armenian state in the fall and winter months of 1920, during the negotiations with Armenian leaders, repeatedly stressed that the Armenians were simply colonists and therefore foreign invaders, and that the so-called Urartians were the real ancestors of the Turks and the original inhabitants of the so-called Eastern Anatolia, quote unquote. Unfortunately, a great deal of scholars, including those of Armenian descent, namely Richard Hovanesyan and others, who are controlling various Armenian studies chairs throughout the United States, have also adopted much of the false claims that put up the Turkish falsificators of Armenian history. Today, it is up to each and every responsible scholar, whether Armenian or otherwise, who holds academic integrity as a guiding principle, to present the obvious and contrary evidence which is supported by overwhelming scientific facts from various disciplines, including archaeology, linguistics, and genetics. Good luck to all of you. Goebekli Nazarian from Armenia, and we are thankful for his thoughts and time that he spent to write the letter. Now, I also would like to, before we go to our first speaker, I would like to read an absatz, a short piece from the statement of President Donald J. Trump on Armenian Remembrance Day 2017. The President of the United States had a long text, but I want to read only a piece of it. He said, as we reflect on this dark chapter of human history, we also recognize the resilience of the Armenian people. Many built new lives in the United States and made indelible contributions to our country, meaning the United States, while cherishing memories of the historic homeland in which their ancestors, pay attention, established one of the great civilizations of antiquity. I hope you get it, what he is trying to say. He is proving the fact that our country has created one of the great civilizations of antiquity, not yesterday. So this is from his speech, and his text. Right now, I would like to present to you one of our speakers, namely guest speaker, Ms. Susan Cooper. She is an occupational scientist and independent researcher. She is a USC alumni. She has done a lot of research in DNA and genealogy. She's done a lot of research in Armenian origin of British Isles. And we welcome you to come and talk to our Armenian audience. Thank you for coming. Come on.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I want to let you know what I'm doing is a very exciting study, and it involves the British Isles. And how I got started, I was going to tell you how I got started. What happened was my family was in the Holocaust. I'm Jewish, and I was raised Jewish. And so I didn't know my family was in the Holocaust. It was hidden from me for some reason. Maybe they want to shelter us, I'm not sure. But what happened was I was on the internet, and next thing I know I was MSNBC. I see my great aunt and uncle. They were on MSNBC, and they were talking about being in Auschwitz. They were Holocaust survivors. And I was surprised. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it because they wanted to shelter us, never do. And then, so from there, I wanted to find out more about my family, what was going on, because it was my great-grandfather and most of his siblings, they were wiped out, just like they had the Armenian genocide. And so I saw that whole families that were just wiped out. I couldn't believe it when I'm doing my studies. And so I started the genealogy, and I started looking at paper trails from where my family went from my mother's side. The family that was in the Auschwitz, they were from Hungary. And then they went, obviously, to Poland. That's where it happened. And the other side of my family, my father's side, they're from Romania and Lithuania. And they had a thing called pogroms, which is like similar to it. So the Holocaust, and this is like in Belarus and in Riga, Latvia, and in Lithuania, that area where they had the pogroms. So my family, from my dad's side, my grandmother, they moved to Baltimore, Maryland. And this was in the late 1800s. They migrated from Lithuania to Baltimore. And so when I was studying genealogy, it's very surprising. You wouldn't believe when you see who you're related to. Because here I just thought I'm just a regular person. There's no way my family's going to be married or to the presidents of the United States and everything like that. Because Baltimore, Maryland, that's near Washington, D.C., and so next thing I know, I'm having the family that says that we're related to Bill Clinton and everything through marriage. And so I was fascinated. I couldn't believe. And then I was looking even further, and then they had like this, it was a lawyer for Billy the Kid. And here we're getting into the Wild Wild West. There was Alexander McSwede, and I see that again, married into my family. So I'm thinking, this is very odd. I would never believe Wild Wild West, and here I'm a Jewish girl, whatever, from Los Angeles, the family's from Hungary. How do we get to the Wild Wild West? You know what I'm saying? And so the McSwede family, I took them, I started studying them, and I took them they went from the 1700s, they went from Isle of Skye, Scotland, and they went to Canada and to the United States in the 1700s. And so I looked at I was able to do a paper trail. I actually did a paper trail. And then what I did is I'm thinking, okay, I wanted to see if the paper trail was real. Because what you do is when you look at paper trails, when you look at, somebody coming from here and from who married this person, who married that person. You want to find out if it's true, so you check when you do DNA testing. So what I did is I took these two cousin matches from the McSween line. One was Harold McSween, and the other one was Hap McSween. Thomas Jefferson. That's Alexander McSween. That's the lawyer of Billy the Kid. That I was surprised. By marriage, I'm related to him. And then so I tested his line, and then I had two participants. One was a 96-year-old man named Harold McSween from Denton, Texas, and the other one was an astrophysicist from Harvard, and his name is Dr. Hap McSween, and he's studying the Mars Project. And so I got DNA samples from both of them. They didn't know each other, and on my paper trail says they're about fifth cousins. So I had them do the testing for me, because Hap McSween, very interesting, because he's a brilliant scientist. And he has an asteroid named after him, which is a minor planet, McSween asteroid, which is interesting. So I told him, I said, okay, you study the stars and everything, I think we need to study you, because I think you belong to this rare haplogroup. Because what happened is I tested Harold, a 96-year-old man, first. And Harold was at it's a haplogroup is basically, it's a set of genes. And the Y haplogroup is these sets of genes, and when you do, it's like a paternity test for a man. It goes from father to son. They go past 20,000 years. We're talking way back when, right? So when I did the testing for Harold, he came back this TM70, the TM184. And, this is like new to me too, but I was talking to people and they said, because they came from Isle of Skye, Scotland, and so that the whole family, and I did the paper trail and everything, and they said, you have a really rare haplogroup, somebody was telling me. And I said, what do you mean? They said, you've gone to something special. They said, if you could actually triangulate or have them match up, then there's something really special that you have. I said, really? So that's when I got Hap to test as well. And sure enough, they were cousins. And then, so what was fascinating about this haplogroup is that the highest population of this haplogroup happens to be the Armenians of Setyan. Okay, so these basically, we're talking ancient times. So they were on the Isle of Skye. They were on the Scotland. So basically, I'm looking, I'm like, this is very interesting. Who are these Armenians of Setyan? I want to know, because it's all in pink. Do you have the pink one? Do you have that one to show? I was going to show it. It was very unusual to have them, because it shows them out of a whole thing is that they're standing out. Because basically the Armenians of Setyan, they were an isolated community. And so they were able to take their DNA and they could see that they were the highest percentage of DNA in this haplogroup. And so what I did is I looked at them and I thought, this is interesting. I'm wondering more about these Armenians of Setyan. And it's kind of funny, I was going to tell you, I recently did my mother's genealogy and tested her, and I have Armenian heritage. I just found that out a couple weeks ago, so I was excited about that. And so anyway, so I tested the haplogroups, and I'm thinking, I was looking at Celtic. What is the Celtic design? And I decided I'm going to look at some of these artifacts and things like that. So I looked at the artifacts from Isle of Skye, Scotland, like in Ireland, they have the crosses and everything, and Irish crosses. And then I forgot, it starts with a K. I can't remember how to pronounce that one, the Armenians. Yeah, they have them in Armenia, and I'm looking, I was like, oh my God, this is the same design. So this is very odd. And I'm looking, there's like more things. They're all like matching up. Things are matching up, even music. I hear the bagpipe now, the folk music. And so I'm looking at all that, and I'm thinking, why in the world there's like, it doesn't say anything. I'm looking through the Wikipedia, maybe I shouldn't look at Wikipedia, but it says that the Celtics are like Irish or Scandinavian and everything. Nothing to say about the Armenians. So I was like really disturbed by that. And well, they have the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which is a chronicle, it's written in the 9th century. And it's basically, it was written by the Anglo-Saxons, and it's the history of the British Isles, okay? So it says, in the first part of it, it says, they came from Armenia. Okay, this is what it says. So I'm like, wow, it came from Armenia. This is interesting. People know. And guess what they did? It was Yale Library. They crossed it out. They crossed it out. A very important manuscript. This is in history, historical. How could you cross out? They came from Armenia, and they said it must have been a mistake. Well, so I'm here to tell you it was not a mistake because I got the DNA, and I have it now. I've got that rare DNA that was in Isle of Skye, Scotland. It probably, their name was McSwain, and they heard that the people came from Scandinavia. So probably what happened was it was the Vikings, whatever. The Vikings were really from Armenia. They married into probably with the Vikings, Scandinavia, because, I mean, obviously, if you check that DNA, it doesn't say Viking, it doesn't say it came from, Canada or whatever. It says it came from the highest percentage. Again, it was the Armenians of Sisson. So you can't really deny it. So Yale's going to have to do something about that. We're gonna figure that one out, get them to change it back the way. What do you say, the paradigm? Because it's like fake news, basically. You know what I'm saying? So, because you can't just trust, you look at history books and things like this, and I always say history is always rewritten by the winner, right? So you look at these history books, but people need to really do their own research, like I'm doing. Because I did an unbiased research. I'm not even looking at anything. I just looked at artifacts. I said, I'm gonna look at these artifacts. I'm gonna make my own judgment, and I was seeing that they were matching up, so they can't deny it. So, so that's what I have to say. It's like very interesting, and I want this thing like the fake news. To me, it's fake news, and people need to be honest, and we need to have, the Armenians, they need to have their place in history, because you can't just say it's Viking, you can't just say it's Irish or whatever that. It basically, they were there on the Isles, their genes are over there, and it's obvious because everything matches up, not just the artifacts, but the music matches up. You can hear the bagpipes, and they say it came from Turkey, but again, this is fake news again, because it was before it was Turkey, it was before Anatolia, Turkey, it was ancient Armenia. And this is another problem that I see, is that people, they get confused. They don't understand because they don't understand the maps. And this is the biggest problem I see as looking at this whole thing, trying to understand for myself. Because people don't know, they just think Armenia is a little country. They don't know anything about it. They didn't know it was so big. And then VAHAN was telling me, he says, well, this is why they probably were able to migrate to Scandinavia and different countries, because they were actually closer than we thought, because it was a big country. And so that's another thing we need to educate people on. Like, for instance, I found out that red wine, and the first grape was cultivated in Armenia. And they found that it was the oldest winery was in Armenia, right? So you look at that and you think, wow, this is amazing. Then I asked Alexa, because I got Alexa, the Google, I got the thing. I said, Alexa, I said, who was the first person who made wine? Who made wine? And Alexa says, the first wine was found in Georgia. And I was like, what? Really? I said, Alexa, are you sure about this? So then I look up Georgia, okay? I did my own research. I looked up Georgia, and it says the first wine was the first, they had like a pottery or whatever it came in Georgia. So then I look, okay, so I said, Alexa, how old is Georgia? How old is the country of Georgia? So 1,000-something years old. Okay, so what was it before? It was Armenia. You know what I'm saying? So here you have big news, big articles written up that the wine came from Georgia, but it really didn't. So we have to, that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to educate people, let people know. That's what you have to look and understand. And that's what I have to say. Any questions, anybody? Or at the end, probably. And so it's very exciting, this research that I'm doing. I'm really happy. So thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing with us all that interesting information. It is very, very inspiring and very positive for all of us to see how non-Armenians are paying attention now to the history and to the falsification of the history that has been going on for a very long time. Actually, that's a different subject that we're going to talk about in our next lecture. But right now, I am going to ask Dr. VAHAN SETYAN to start his lecture that is going to be fascinating, and he's got a lot to say with lots of pictures, and I hope all of you will stay tuned, and here he comes.
Well, thanks for coming. You got to be insane to come here on Thursday to a library, so thanks for coming. Couple of thanks, first of all, to Global Financial Services. They helped me with this event, so I want to thank you. They're a credit agency. They help with financial services and the loans and stuff like that, so you can actually have their brochures right there on the side. Also for the Our Roots, they have cultural and educational products and services, and you can go to their website. They have a table right there, and they provide 15% of their profits to nonprofit organizations. So if you could talk to them during the intermission or afterwards, their desk is there, and they provide the insight to cultural products, educational products, and services regarding our culture and beyond. So I also want to say thank you, Hamlet, for this opportunity. He's a great man. He has provided a lot of insight to a lot of us youngsters and gave us the energy for us to move forward. So I want to thank you, Hamlet, for all you have done throughout the years. Appreciate it. And Haraj Kozibiokian is also here. Where is he? Yeah, the carpet master. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Okay. It was a challenging thing to put this together. I had to change dates and cancel, and I came back, so I really appreciate you coming all this way. It's kind of a challenge for me to do this while I'm working out there with the Native Americans and help with their cancer patients within the Navajo Nation. I cover 3 states of their nation. They're the largest tribe in the world, and I'm the first non-Native to be accepted as an organization for me to help them with their cancer patients, whether they're elders or children. I had a lot of children in my hands that passed away 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. I had veterans who passed away. So it's kind of tough for me to see them as the original people within the United States, and that reflects a lot of things about my culture back home and all this fight about whether they're original inhabitants of Armenia or not. So it's kind of, we share a lot of culture. We share a lot of heritage. And you can imagine me driving back and forth every week for thousands of miles at night, alone. It does things to you. You start talking to yourself. Imagine at 3 a.m. And then you start talking about to yourself, what your mission is in life, and then what you can do. So now at the same time, while I'm trying to help the historical community with our history, at the same time, I'm trying to help them with theirs. And when you talk to yourself, you start to stay awake. So I say to myself, "Tzidik, tzidik, motari," you go crazy. And then we start having a conversation with them. I said, okay, to the Navajo, I said, what do you call the birds? Well, they say for all the birds we say titi. And I'm saying, yeah, we say titi too. So coincidence or not, we have to really understand that we're talking about ancient history and prehistory too. Okay, so for us to understand ancient history, we got to go back in time, and we really have to understand this from a prehistoric standpoint. So anyway, you guys know Wayne Dyer, he's an American philosopher. I don't agree with a lot of things that he says, But there's one thing he said that resonates, I think, and when he says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So let's look at history, ancient history, prehistory, from another vantage point. The problem with history, especially ancient history, is that we're mortal. Hopefully we live by 70, 80, 90 years old and then we pass on. So when it comes to understanding, let's say 13,000 years of human history, let's say, after the last ice age, it's difficult. People get lost. And on top of that, you have historical books that say one thing, religious people say another. And you get lost in the shuffle. So we want to go beyond of what we have been told. And for us to do that, we really have to take a personal approach to what we see and how do we see history. I mean, the historians will always tell you this is the fact or this is the opinion, but they never tell you how to look at it. Because they themselves had the wrong approach when it comes to the assumptions that they make about the history. So this is a timeline. Sometimes people get all mixed up when it comes to a timeline. The time goes like that. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's this way or that way, but this is the timeline. Today's Thursday, tomorrow is going to be Friday. It doesn't matter what people say, the metaphysics and all that. It doesn't matter. Tomorrow, it's tomorrow, it's Friday. Same thing with back then. If we go back, it happened, let's say, 1,000 years ago, 13,000 years ago, and we need to keep this in line. So when we start talking about history way back then, people get lost. They have no idea how to, navigate within this ancient and prehistoric time. So we have to give them some markers, and for us to do that, we need to give them some arsenal on how to interpret history. So Armenian history is not only ancient, it's prehistoric. That's solution number one. So we see Armenian language in all the areas around the globe. Polynesia, South America, Europe, Basque, South America, North America, doesn't matter. You will see Armenian words somewhere. Now the question is, how did that language get out there? Well, it was during prehistoric times. Very simple. And I will show you why that is the case. Okay, this is a good representation of the Armenian Highlands. So as you can see, it covers half of Turkey, goes down to Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, all the way down up to Georgia, even further like this. So people have a problem with understanding this part. I got to be a little bit graphic too. Let's say, you have a tourist, from the United States to Turkey. They decided to go to Turkey, with a backpack, with a cap. Has no idea where he's going. All he heard was Turkey, and all of a sudden it's ancient Turkey now. Ancient United States, what a ridiculous thing to say, right? So same thing with Turkey. What's so ancient about it? But they don't know that. They go there to their museums, so they say, okay, this is ancient Turkish artifacts, and then he comes back, and now all of a sudden he contaminates his other students about the ancient Turkey. So, ancient Armenian Highlands, Հայկական Լեռնաշխարհ. Okay. So these are the actual borders, and even beyond that. So we're between this and this. This one has Kilikia and all those areas on the bottom. So when we talk about all these findings here, there, people get lost. They forget this map. And then they're trying to figure out where who does the artifacts belong to. The biggest falsifiers are historians themselves, linguists themselves, to a great extent the religious folk too, because they have no idea. Anyway, so this is the Armenian Highlands. I put this in a background so you can see how it covers. Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia way on the top, Syria, Iraq, Iran. So you can see that. Okay, this is everything, all the cultural firsts that has happened when it comes to civilization happened in this area. Now it's this small. Okay? So if we went from here to here. So when they find something over here, they say Turkey. Over here, Azerbaijan. Over there, Georgia. But before it was all like this. So because it has become very small to this extent, then these countries, newer countries, they start incorporating all that was Armenian into theirs. At the same time, because Armenians are not paying attention to their history either. And most of them don't care. So if you have gold sitting around and you don't want it, another person is going to take it. All right, this is the map of, the reason why I have this map is I want to also correct things as we move forward, okay? I'm not here to really educate. I'm here for us to look at certain things from a different vintage standpoint, and you can use that for your own historical research. All right, this is Middle East. You can Google it yourself. When you put a Middle East map, it will give you this, or even all the way to the other side, Tajikistan and all that. Armenians are not Middle Eastern. Don't say I'm from Middle East. That's not good, because it tells you have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, Armenia right now belongs to Europe. Okay, it doesn't belong to Middle East. There's a research done on, let's say, all the cultures that value their own culture and heritage. And Armenia has 84%, Greece has 89%, which is understandable. Georgia, 85%. So what I'm saying is, when they ask you where you're from, don't say, I'm Middle Eastern. Doesn't make any sense historically or from a current standpoint. You can say I'm Eastern European, or you can say I'm an Armenian from Armenian Highlands. Very simple. Because it confuses them too. All of a sudden you're an Arab, or you're an Assyrian. You're not. Because that completely destroys your entire history. All the way back to 13, 15, 18,000 years, even back further, okay? So you gotta be careful with your words. Because when people ask you where you're from, obviously they don't know the difference between an Armenian, a Georgian, an Arab, and stuff like that, so they wanna learn. So when you tell them that, all of a sudden it's misinformation already. So be careful what you say. All right, so what happens when you drop a pebble in the water or in a river? It radiates to all the corners from the same spot. So the Neolithic Revolution, I don't want to use the word a lot because it doesn't convey too much info, but the many firsts of civilization when it comes to from hunter and gatherers, the transition into a more systematic society with agriculture and domestication, metallurgy, you name it, came from Armenia, and then it resonated to all the other areas during prehistoric times when there was no literature on the other areas. Okay? So it actually, when you don't have any literature, no videos, no audio, those people all around the area, you're talking about throughout the globe, how would they know who came there 10,000 years ago? So now we need to investigate this through our language, through the DNA, through artifacts for us to prove them and to prove us who we are. Okay, I put this map together because a lot of things that we talk about, the new findings and stuff like that, they're all in the same region right here. Ararat right here, Areni Cave, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Nemrut, Portasar. Oh yeah, Portasar is a Goebekli Tepe. Everybody talks about Goebekli Tepe. Even Klaus Schmidt, who was the guy that started the investigation of Portasar. He uses that a lot. He uses the word Turkey in a very thick German accent, Turkey. So, and by the way, Klaus Schmidt was married to a Turkish woman. That's why he had all that access to Portasar for the investigation. You don't know why, but Armenians are not there for the investigation on their own lands. An ancient Armenian artifact is being dug up for the last 20 years, and no official Armenian delegation is there for them to investigate Portasar. I mean, there's got to be something wrong with that picture, right? Okay, this is a good representation from people of art. I like it very much because it's very brief, but at the same time, you know, it talks about the top 10 first. You know, you're talking about the leather shoe, 5,500 years old. That's about what, 100 times, 500 times older than Azerbaijan, the shoe itself. Karahunj. Professor Kleiner said that he determined that Karahunj stone structures prove that many thousands of years earlier than the Middle Age Europe, the Armenians knew the year to consist of 365 days and Earth to be spherical. Even today, we got flat earthers, and 1,000 years ago, come on. That's another sickness, by the way, so we'll talk about that too. Anyway, some comparisons. Portasar with Karahunj, and some people say, well, those are those holes for the horses to be harsoned. Anyway, the oldest preserved brain, was found in Armenia. With a wheel, chariot, a fragment of a skirt, oldest winery. Even the word wine is from Guinea. Well, there's a transposition of g and v and w, so when you say wine, it's Guin. And Francis Hewitt actually proved us where it's coming from. He said Assyrians first discovered the making of the wine from the Armenians, obviously, yeah. But this is the thing. It's very difficult for the people to grasp this because of time. They don't understand what comes before or after. They get confused in the timeline. They hear Assyria, yes, it's old, but there's an older civilization, right? The earliest metallurgy, iron smelting, it was in Armenia. Okay, you're talking about iron smelting, okay? The oldest swords that were found was in Armenia, ancient Armenia, okay, ancient Armenia. These are copper swords. They were dipped in arsenic to make it harder. Okay, so if you're an ancient and you're dealing with copper and you're dipping something in arsenic to make it harder, you better be a chemist. Okay, so we're dealing with chemists back then. If they know chemistry, they know mathematics. If they know mathematics, they have literature. And we're talking about Mesor Mashtots, that he invented something. I mean, we got to use reason and rationality when it comes to all this stuff. We can't just take it in just because somebody said it. Okay, I'm going to read a few things. Copper beads excavated in Armenia in the Neolithic settlement of Artashen, dated to the early 6th millennium BC, is earliest appearance of copper in the southern Caucasus. 6th millennium BC. That's even before the high points of Sumer. Okay, petroglyphs found in Armenia show the oldest pictures of men driving chariots, wagons, and plows with horses doing the pulling. This is Ukhtazar, Jermazor, all those regions in Armenia. Here's a guy with agricultural stuff, see? And the mules pulling it, agriculture. At this time, the rest of the globe was just hunting and gathering. They had the fur underwear with, arrows, maybe some feathers. And over there, we're doing, systematic domestication, agriculture. All right. This is a map from Klaus Schmidt, the guy that has been excavating the Portasar. He even has the 9,000 BC as the time when animal domestication happened. And then you have these regions too. But the problem with him is that he thinks that these regions, the agriculture was independent of one another. That's very problematic. I'll show you why. The oldest dam was at Mehrabulur in Armenia, 5,500 years old. And, you know, people always ask me, can you prove it? Yeah. Here's a book you can buy from Czech Republic. They wrote that there. So hopefully you're taking notes. But I'm just going to show you few things. Anyway, you have seen this map before. Okay, remember the ancient Armenian Highland? Okay, always keep this in mind when you look at this. You got pigs, you got cattle, sheep, all that seeds, all within that region right there. It's happening over here. The milk revolution, obviously, this is from Nature magazine. It's come from the same map, remember the map, all happening over here, and then going that way, further up. And you have seen this map before. This is from Ivanov from UCLA. And then they have the spread of the Indo-European dialects going this way, that way. The cultures in this area, they got to realize that, it has to come from one source. Then it goes to you. So when they say this word is ours, well, remember where it came from. Okay, this is Portasar, this is Urfa, Edessa, this region right here. Okay, you already know this picture. This is Portasar. This is from National Geographic, so they gotta draw something to show, the structure. It looks like a woman womb, by the way, I personally think. At that time, you can imagine what was going on there in their minds, and I'm gonna give you a small demonstration how ridiculous the current academia is when they talk about Portasar, okay? And the building of this. All right. So they're saying that this is basically about 12,000 years old. 12,000 years old. And this is the time of hunting and gathering. Berries, this, that, women running around and all that. And then they show a picture of a woman and a kid, a guy with feathers, naked. Yeah. Sorry if it's too blurry, but anyway, a good representation of this, trees. These people are hauling an 80-ton block, putting all this together. All right? Is there an engineer in the house? Architect. When you're trying to build something, you got to have blueprints. You got to have language to communicate the guy on the other side what to do. Can you imagine they have no proper language, no blueprints, and then now they're trying to build this, tons of blocks in astronomical order. It looks at the Sirius, all the constellations, you might say. Can you imagine? They're doing this stuff while they're hunter and gatherers. Nothing to back. Can you imagine this guy telling this guy on the other side, be careful? And then, he's telling this guy, listen, tell Jacob to get that brick put over there because this would happen here. Can you imagine that's happening and there is no communication? Obviously this was found on those regions. This is the oldest figurine, a 6-foot figurine that was found in ancient Armenia, okay? And then you have the hands like this. People don't know what the H is. I think I have an idea what the H is. And then you have the bull. And then, very close to the guy in Costa Rica. Obviously, this is about 10,000 years old, 9,000 years old. This is, I think, 3, 4? So anyway, you have these 3D representations on a block. Can you imagine you're hunter and gatherer with a fur underwear? And you're doing this stuff? One day they wake up, listen, you know what? Let's build Portasar. Jacob, you take, you get that stone, you get the hammer, get the blueprints going, but they're hunting and gathering berries. All right.
No questions asked. What is happening?
Yeah, what is happening? Yeah. Yeah. That's right. So this is a 3D thing. I mean, even I can't make it. I mean, even like you gotta have an expert to do this. It's a 3D. This is 12,000 years ago, okay? I took this picture yesterday in Burbank. I mean, you gotta give credit to these guys. I mean, this was 12,000 years ago. There's this hypothesis that's saying that the Aboriginal Australians have to do something with it. Let me show you a couple of interesting things. The T-shaped dome at Portasar, you see that the T, they think that it somehow is connected with Aboriginal Australians. And this is the reason why they're saying it. This is a picture from 100 years ago, and they have this thing as a T. And also, this is one of the Aboriginal, this is his stomach. They link this to this in Portasar. It's just a hypothesis, but I have an answer for this, and I'll give you my interpretation of what it is. This is Portasar. This is Australia. So, Walter Munder said the longitudinal point of origin for the original constellations were designed in Near East and Armenia. Well, we can take away the Near East. And of course, you have read this too, the only place where all the zodiac animal symbols are marked simultaneously is the prehistoric Armenia. William Elcott. Now, these guys had no proper DNA mechanism, for testing. There was no proper anthropology. All the tools that we have now, it wasn't available at that time for them. And these guys are saying things that we're proving today, just on language and artifacts and comparative linguistics. They're very, very critical for our consideration. This is Portasar from the top, one of them. It has 10 blocks and then 2 in the middle, so 12. So we think that this may be the 12 constellations, 12 hours in a day, on the clock, 12 months, 12 disciples, obviously. Let's keep that thought when they have, can you imagine, let's say you're there and looking at the stars for thousands of years. And Portasar, let's say it's 12,000 years old, right? It doesn't mean it came up automatically. You have to give them at least thousands of years of time before that for them to develop and put this together into that. So we're already pushing the, you might say, the civilization, not hunter and gatherer, but civilization back even further, for them to come to a point of putting all this together from the astronomical standpoint, for it to make sense, right? So again, reason and rationality is absent from this. You have Klaus Schmidt doing it, so some other historians. But still, all this stuff is in Turkey now. So all these scientists cannot say ancient Armenia because our Armenians are not there. It's not being funded by Armenia. So we can't go in there. So obviously they need to say Turkey. Now the problem is that because of our omission and because of academic omission, now we have books that says ancient Turkey. Now you gotta be insane to actually write a book and say ancient Turkey. It doesn't even make sense. You have to have either a supporter of what you're doing, or you gotta get out of academia because there's something. I have tried to contact each and every person, including Jennifer Tobin from Chicago. I can't get a hold of her, so it's kind of tough for me to do a debate. But anyway, this is evidence that obviously books are being falsified. So if you can imagine, let's say a person in the United States has no idea about his own culture. You ask them, where you're from, they say, I think my ancestors are from Texas. That's as far as it goes, Texas, okay? And he's reading a book on this. Obviously, when he goes to Turkey, he's gonna say, look at ancient Turkey, how beautiful it is. the artifacts. And with no understanding that, you know what, that's not the case. You know, you have, so we're facing that problem. And this is from Portasar. He pronounces this as rararas, meaning to create. How do we say to create in Armenian? Ararel, ararats, himar aratzes, right? We say it. So this guy is interpreting this without knowing Armenian. And he's already coming close to our language here. This, he says it's nav, meaning spaceship. So actually there's an opinion that navež comes from nav, navež. All right, the triangles that he found in Portasar, he says it's Ardeni. He has no idea though. Oh, by the way, if you read Ardeni backwards, is Indra. Ardeni Indra. Okay, this one, you know, kar working, anyway. So he's coming very, very close to the Armenian language. So we can push our language back even further to at least that time. I have more, and it's going to be part of my book, so it's kind of, I just want to give you a little taste of what's really happening out there, and because we're the only ones that can do this. They cannot do it because they don't know Armenian. Okay, this means ara. Okay, he found the word ara on Portasar. Aswa or aswats, astvats, swastika, and so forth. You know, it's all there. So I think there's the golden triangle is this: Armenia, Egypt, and Sumer. Of course, with all this, what's happening here, there's a connectedness, a prehistoric connectedness, because whatever we find in Egypt, all the fundamentals is found in Armenia. Whatever we found in Sumer, all the fundamentals are in Armenia. But there's a lot of research being done, and that's what I'm trying to say. I'm the first person that's vocally saying, listen, guys, we got to go to Armenia. We got to translate all those books and bring it here so we can revolutionize the way history is being given to people. You know, it's not happening. So if we take 10 books from Armenia on this stuff, it will delete all the thousands of books in the United States on ancient history. But we're not doing it. It's collecting dust. If we even have historians here present today, if we read their books and translate it in English, it's going to destroy everything else that is being taught in UCLA, including the arguments of VAHAN SETYAN and Garzoyan and all those imbeciles out there. Mount Nemrut, you know, this is another problem. You know, even within the Armenian population, they're saying, you know, what does Nemrut have to do with it? You know, we see all those Greek things on them. You know, why are we calling it Armenia if it's not? Well, all right. These are your ancient gods. I hope you know that. And they're still around if you want to remember them. You know, this is from Nemrut. You know, you see these designs right here in the lion. And of course, this one is from Portasar. Remember that? Under the ship. Okay, so we have this. You know, there's this big battle. Oh, you know, this is Mithridates, you know, saying hello to Zeus. And I'm saying no, it can't be, because he's actually wearing a distinct Armenian crown. Look at this stuff right here. Isn't this Tigran the Great with this and all that? See, it's a different vintage standpoint. They have volumes and volumes of this information telling you it's not Armenian. You show them one word and you're done. Good night. So that's why we got to use this arsenal that we have for us to refute something that even... See, it's very difficult for professors to accept stuff like this because they have spent all their lives doing it, and you're telling them wrong, and you're proving they're wrong. So they're going to hate you. They did their PhD dissertation on crap. But as a scientist, you got to be open for new ideas, right? That's what makes you a scientist. Okay, Mount Nemrut in ancient Armenia houses the ruins of the Armenian pantheon of gods built by Antiochus, who was one of the kings of Comagene, one of the 4 Armenian kingdoms. This is David Livingstone. He wrote a lot about Armenia, Armenians in Syria. Tigran the Great, the actual coin, as you can see, I think this is a vulture instead of an eagle. You know, people say it's a peacock, I don't know. But I think it's a vulture. Angr. Yeah, so if we say Angr, that means that it's Angr, Anglo-Saxon, Angr-Sasun, Anglo-Saxon, which is Sasunsi Angr-Nej, which went to Britain. And of course, you know, Angr is kind of a worshipping thing because when you're dead, they think that the vultures takes it away because vultures eat the body anyway. Actually, that idea can go back to Portasar, right? Because they were looking at the vulture constellation. And when you look at the vulture constellation, they thought that's the same thing. The dead are being eaten by the vultures and taken apart. So there is a continuity in ideas from ancient Armenia, from our ancestors all the way down, despite all the destruction. I haven't even talked about destruction yet. 99.9% of the Armenian culture is destroyed. Guess why? Any ideas? Take a guess. Religion. That's right. Everything was burned. Every single thing was destroyed. It was turned to dust. And now the Armenians are saying, okay, I want to find my ancestors. So we go to Sumer, we go to the Rig Veda, we go to Egypt to find our people written from their perspective. And they're blaming us that we're trying to find ourselves. Oh, you know, what are you doing looking at in the Vedas about your information, even though we already can prove that we went up there and you got our language, you turned into another thing, and now it's yours. All we're saying is we were the ones that brought there. And I'm trying to reach for my roots from your, you know, historical sources. Who knows Robert Ellis? I'm sure some of you have read his books. Armenian conquests of Europe were during prehistoric and pre-traditional times. He said this, and I don't think he realized what he said. He solved one of the problems. We look at from a prehistoric standpoint. That solves it. That solves our words and our culture in those cultures in other side of the globe. And this explained how we got there. And then time forgot. Okay, let me give you an example that I usually use, okay? Let's say we're all Armenian. No disrespect. I'm just saying, let's say we're all Armenian. We're going to Africa, you know, to find some gold, you know, for maybe 3-4 months. We go there, we do barbecue, we talk in Armenian, we joke around, you know, Sarkis Jurabej, this, that. We laugh, we build things, we show them a lighter, we show them how to start a fire. And then the inhabitants around the area are around us. We talk to them. They're asking, you know, they don't know the language. We're saying, Kova, Kara, Karaka, Yeval. We spend 4 months and then leave. Let's say this is 6000 BC. All right, now they have few words they have gotten from us. So to build something, to say something, and now let's say 4,000 years have passed or 6,000 years have passed. No written records. We go back to them and we can hear our words that's being used, altered by their culture, altered by meaning, right? A lot of things, you know, have an opposite meaning now. So what happens? Try to prove them that you got it from us. It's not going to happen. But even though you can prove to them that, you know, the words that you're using, it's in our language. So same thing with that. If we find, let's say, Armenian words in Polynesia, which is statistically significant, it's very important for people to realize. The Armenian words found in the Polynesian language is statistically significant. It cannot be chance. I've done a lot of research. I'm a statistician myself. If you have an actual data and you take in a significant amount of words and you try to compare it, Armenian words within the Polynesian language and the Basque language, they're statistically significant. How it got there is another question. But it's there. It can't be a coincidence. Okay, another thing from Ellis. Armenians under the names of Phrygians, Thracians, Pelasgians, Etruscans, all these people were Armenian. But what history does is they divide the Armenians into these separate groups and they tell them it's unrelated. And then another book published like that, and then that book is being used by another guy as a source, and then the other guy is using that book as a source. All of a sudden we have this disaster. And then all of a sudden the guys who were cousins, let's say, or brothers and sisters, all of a sudden they're not belonging to one another anymore. And then history has taken its course. All of a sudden, these are Semitic, from Africa, you name it. Robert Ellis. The Armenians, like the Celts, are now few in number. They belong once to a longer extent of a country where they spread westward from Armenia to Italy under the names of Phrygians, Thracians, spread to all locations. Okay. This is Waddell. What he said something is very, very important. We need to give respect to each and every culture, how they have contributed to the human civilization. But we also need to give respect to those things that actually are more meaningful and actually have a reality within history. Okay, I got to read this to you. It's very important because it gives us another perspective of what it means something to be Semitic or Phoenician versus ancient or old Armenian, okay? No Semitic dynasty whatsoever has to be found in Mesopotamia throughout the whole period of recorded history, from rise of civilization downwards until the Semitic Assyrian period of 1200 BC. All the dynasties before this period are alleged by Assyriologists, by Semitic scholars, to be Semitic, even though they're not. See, when you have a discussion and a debate, and saying, Vaughn, well, I have this guy saying this, and I'm saying, how do you know he's saying the truth versus me, for example? Well, he did his research, and I'm saying I did mine. So there's a constant back and forth battle until we have to find other means that I'm showing you to prove that that's not the case. Phoenicians were Aryan in race, speech, and script. So when they say, the Phoenician influenced the Greek and the Hebrew and stuff like that, we got a problem with terminology. Because of terminology, we're creating people who are not part of that system. And that's wrong, because when we properly align the paradigm, we help everybody's history to come into view. Even those people who thought they were this, now they're this. We're helping them out. So the Armenian history actually helps everybody else to put their historical perspective into the right timeline. Now, whether they want it or not, that's a different story. The oldest swastikas were found in Armenia, with obviously a benevolent means, eternal life and so forth, the cosmos, Milky Way, and all those things. And then, you see this right here? Okay, well, that's the first letter of the Armenian alphabet. They're saying that the letter A in English is coming from Phoenicians, and they show this. Well, we have an older one. And this is in Portasar. If this is the horns of a cow, understandably, who did this? Who domesticated the cows? Well, you have to make this connection, and it's already evident that the Phoenicians were not Semitic. But anyway, I digress. But you got to look at history again. If we're talking about saying that this is the origins, and I prove to you, no, I have another better example here. Well, you got to go with this, right? That's it. Okay. This is what happened, obviously. They went from Armenian Highlands to all these different regions, taking with them culture, heritage, Language. Obviously, some didn't return. They went and they changed into something else. Their speech changed. They adapted to the environment. They forgot the history back home. You're talking about thousands of years of change. Okay? So they go into other cultures, creating new cultures, naming it something else. And this is in Polynesia. The hands that goes like this, and this is in ancient Armenia. Okay, this is in Easter Island. This is Easter Island. Here's a boat in the back of the statue. This is in Portasar and Germazor. This is Hamlet Martirosyan's work. All right, you see this? This is not a boat. This is a ship. You see this? The water has to be very deep for you to have this. That means that around Armenia was an island before, during prehistoric times. So they needed the ships for them to circumvent the globe. So they went all the way to the other regions during prehistoric times. Okay. These are the words in Polynesia. Leila Stepanian has done a lot of work, and she contacted me a few days ago to thank me for this presentation. All right. For those haters out there, you can find these words in a dictionary if you don't like it. Okay, so haitni, haite, hina, hini, kata, tari, kari. All these words are the same. Okay, so you got what, 10 of them? It can't be a coincidence, can it? This combined with this, combined with that. Obviously, you've seen this before. This is Armenia, this is Arizona. I've seen this myself in Arizona. In Spain, New Mexico, Venezuela, Tucson, New Mexico, they're all the same. So there had to be one commonality connecting all these regions. Okay, this is Portasar. These handbags. Maybe Giorgio Armani got this from there, I don't know. Giorgio Armani handbags. And this is in Egypt, 6,000 years later. Okay, another example like that. This handbag. And obviously you can find in Sumer, Bolivia, Ecuador, ancient Armenia. They're holding a bag. Now, remember this timeline? Okay, so this is 12,000 years old. This is about 2,000. So you can actually see a commonality. What happened? If there is no connection between those civilizations or people, how is this being constantly going around the globe? People carrying out bags. Well, we got to think it from that vantage standpoint. There is a source of information that these people have, and we don't know how they're getting their data from one to the other. Ancient Egypt, you've seen this before, right? Okay, well, this is in Armenia. This is a drawing on Armenia. I think it's Germazor, I think. Yeah. And you have seen this before. So we have all this commonality between all these different cultures. You see ancient Armenia here? Where is it? Right here? On the website, somebody changed it to ancient Turkey. I had to change it back. And you can imagine it goes on the internet. And we're one of the few, you got to understand this. You can count us in the diaspora on your fingers. There's probably 10 of us fighting a battle with falsification outside of Armenia. All right? So we're one of the few. And still we're being criticized for doing so. putting all this energy and time into this, trying to preserve our heritage and culture, and they're still telling you you're wasting your time. They still tell you, they give you threats. Okay, you have seen the language tree. Any language tree, you can just, this is just for visualization purposes, okay? So you have the trunk, and then you have the Greco-Armenian, you have the Balto-Slavic and Celtic and all that, and you have all the way, you're coming down to newer languages here and offshoots, Spanish and all that. And you also have very serious research by Atkinson and Gray, all the way on the bottom. They say that Hittite is here, Tocharian is here, Armenian. So they put Hittite, Tocharian, and then Armenian as the oldest, and then Greek and all that. So basically they're saying that Armenian is the oldest language that has survived since the last ice age, and we're still talking in Armenian, okay? But putting Hittite here and Tocharian as a separate thing is a problem. It's a problem. It is certain that there was a primeval speech called, at the present by scholars, the Aryan tongue, which is very, very important to say Aryan versus Indo-European. When you say Indo-European, it doesn't make any sense. You're saying a language from India to Europe. And the person who doesn't know it, they don't realize that because there is an arrow of influence, remember? When you say Indo-European, then all of a sudden your map goes like this instead of saying, Aryan, for it to go this way into the other regions. So the way we use the words is very important. This is Hittite kingdom. And as far as for the map, it can be a little bit different, but this is just for illustration purposes. Some Hittite kings, very, very similar to the Araratian kingdom, which is the same. But anyway, Hittite, we already have that. We see it in Armenia. Doing the same thing. Hittite tongue is Armenian, and Hittites themselves were of Armenian stock. So what happened here? So why are we saying that Hittite and all that is older than Armenian when these guys are saying that Hittite's tongue is Armenian and Hittites themselves were Armenian stock? And then you have Charles Anthon, worshippers of Chaldee, from Armenia. They were original Celts, a mountain race. So he's basically saying the Celtic people were Armenians, which of course coincides with Susan. All right, Hittite inscriptions require the Armenian language to be understood. The Armenians remind us of Hittite in many ways. They cannot be separated. Hittites were always represented like modern Armenians in Egyptian monuments. Almost everything we know about the Hittite language is in Old Armenian. These are all separate guys, independent researchers. This is Hilbrecht. The Hittite writing was invented by the forefathers of modern Armenians. So what happened with Hittite being older and all that? I think that Hittite, Tocharian, Sumerian, and all that, they are different dialects of the Armenian language. It solves the problem, right? And I'll show you why. I have a proof for that. Stay tuned. All right. You've seen this map before, very similar. You have Azazi Hayasa, and then you have Mitanni. All these ancient words and towns and stuff like that. They will write volumes and volumes of information and research on Mitanni and Hayasa or Mitanni, but they have no idea what Mitanni means. They don't talk about the word. But we need to use the Armenian language for us to show and prove that it's in the root of your word that it is Armenian. Okay. Mitanni. When they say, Mitanni were a group of Aryan people unrelated or Semitic and stuff, you hear that all the time. They're being careful just for them to say something, for them not to be accountable for something. They'd rather be safe than sorry. But, you can prove them. Okay, you ask them, what is mitani? I don't know. Well, mitun. It's a consolidated house. Mitun. Okay, how many people have the name Vachagan? Armenians, right? There you go. The capital is Vachagan. Vashukani, Vachagan. It's very simple. That's it. Another proof right there. You say that and then, all lights out, you're done.
I also saw my name, by the way.
Naidijan. All right, next one. The invention of bronze was remember copper? Now it's bronze. The invention of bronze was in Northern Asia Minor, and with Sumerian names for precious metals aligning with Armenian, raises the question as to the origin of the Sumerian civilization. Okay, in Sumerian, for gold is guskin, in Armenian is voski. Does the G make a difference? All of a sudden, if I change from G to V, now it's less the revelation. Why can't people do it on their own? Sumer and Armenia belong to the same stock. Oldest winery. Okay, just a little bit of this boomerang effect. I call this into a boomerang effect because when people get out of here and they go to all these different places, and 1,000 years later when it comes back, it comes in a cultural tangent, changed and altered and modified, and then they come back and they say to the same people, that's my word. For example, let's say you know how to put together, let's say, yogurt. You go out there, yogurt, and then Turks say, yogurt is ours. If you Google it right now, it's going to say Turkish, right? But they have no word for it, though. There is no root word for yogurt. But Armenians, they have it, yogurt. Yug. Yug is orskal, right? Yogurt. Matsun, yeah, even matsun. At the same time, they say it's Georgian. Now you have a fight with Georgians now. Same thing with us. So a word goes out, few thousand years, with their own accent, with their own language, with their own connotations, and then comes back and say, you know what, you're using our word. It doesn't work that way. For the concept of yogurt, for it to be made, you have to be sedentary. You have to live there for a very long time. You got to know agriculture and animals. You can't be a nomad and make dolma, right?
You have to know what is inside of it.
That's right. Yeah, you can't make dolma being an Arab nomad, right? Okay, let's make dolma. Okay, let's do an exercise. Okay, you have your handy-dandy smartphones. All right. You know what's ego? The reason why I wrote in Armenian too, just for you to pronounce it, ego. Do you know what it is? I'm trying to prove a point. Just, what is it? You guys are Armenian, right? It means to come. I'll give you the reason why I'm doing this in just a second. Here's another one. You know what evil is? And I'll tell you where this language is from. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. It's a sentence. Jora jorga bano. Let's say I come in the room and say Jora jorga bano. Would you understand what I'm saying? Խոսքը բերում. All right, another one. Ուխնոց օղ գիրմանե. Let's say I'm saying this to you. What the hell are you talking? Օրհնած աղաբարի է. It's an Armenian dialect, Beylani dialect. I want to prove a point. When you don't recognize the word, doesn't mean it's not Armenian. Just because you know that dialect doesn't mean you're going to understand the others. So when I say these words are Basque or Polynesian, and the Armenian says, "Well, I don't know those words," well, you don't know that. You don't know that either, right? So you can't just assume that just because you don't get that word doesn't mean, you know what, it's not Armenian. Forget about it. Well, I just proved to you, nobody knows. So basically, if I have a person from Beylani dialect and I'm sitting here, Armenian to Armenian, I have no idea what it's saying. 726? Thank you, sir. 726. So in other words, let's say in Armenia, the guy over here has no idea what this guy is saying, what this guy is saying. Maybe they understand each other, but not this guy. But they're Armenian. Can you imagine on the other side of the globe, same thing happening? And now our words are within their cultures. And
Algeria, I was going to say Algeria and Morocco, they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand Saudi Arabia.
yeah,
They
they're,
speak Arabic. It's a different dialect.
that's right. So the point is that, you know, we have to first understand each other's dialect for us to negate the idea that we found Armenian words in Polynesia. Very simple. All right, so where is the Beylani? It's around Antioch in Syria. Remember the map of ancient Armenia? Yeah, okay, it's part of it. All right, and then as far for proof, you know, this is the book. If you don't believe me, you know, you can take it. Another reference for you. All right, and these are all the dialects that we have. 700 and some you said, but let me put 60. Okay, 60. 60. So, you know, can you imagine all the words that we don't know? If the researchers knew Armenian and they had at least 10 dialects under their tool belt, they will understand all the languages around the globe as Armenian. Here's some more.
But this is like all over Armenia? Like they're all like...
Here's some more. Here's some more. So you have all this homework now to do. So, you know, you got to look at all these words and try to figure out what you don't know, what you don't. Basically, we don't know anything. So we don't know anything. How are we going to examine and neglect the things that we find in other cultures and say it's not ours? They're the ones saying that, you know, this is Armenian, and we're over here saying that, no, it's not, because I don't understand that word. That's not good. No good. I'm going to talk about the word eight as an example, as an exercise. You know, when you look at in Google, you say, what's the root word of eight? It's going to say, you know, German, and it's going to go to other regions. And it never says Armenian. I just showed you the oldest language that has survived is Armenian. How the hell is Armenian missed from the etymological dictionaries? If you have two words, let's say if you have a word, and you have two languages. If one of the languages is older than the other one and can explain the same thing the same way, even better, then you take the older language, right? It's very simple, but that logic is not in the dictionaries. They say it's Greek and it's over. Right? I mean, it's very, and the thing is, that the worst thing of all is that people believe it. Even Armenians say, oh yeah, it's Greek. You know, why, if it's Greek, why are you putting Armenian in there? You're basically saying that I rather hear the grandson than the great-great-grandfather who's saying the same thing. I'm telling you, it's a psychological problem. It's not even evidence-based. You know, there's inferiority complex, something going on, and it has to do with the genocide and everything else the last 120 years. Yeah. So, you know, the word eight you have all these different variations. And the problem is that people get confused. All of a sudden, it's written a different way. They lose their minds. Let's go back to what it actually pronounces like, in Armenian, you say ut, in English is 8. What is the problem? Just because, the u is not that's why we're lost? We got to use that. We have to listen to what we're saying. So we got an etymological dictionary problem. The oldest language that can actually give you an example which is better than anything else is completely missing from the dictionaries. There's something wrong with that picture. Teacher, let's do an exercise. Okay, I don't know, you can Google it too. Can you give me a root word of teacher? Where does it come from? Let's do this exercise. Somebody Google it and says what it says. Besides from what it means, can you find what the root word is for teacher? We'll give it a few seconds here. Whoever knows, I'm just proving a point, okay? Whoever knows, I'll be quiet. Yeah.
I just heard the word. Somebody said that.
Yeah.
Somebody said
All right. Tachar. Ta-char. Give guidance. That's why all our Mithraic temples were tachars. There was a Mithraic priest in there giving you a solution to your problem. All right, so if you look at your internet right now, I can guarantee you they're not going to give you this example because they have no idea. All those people that wrote those dictionaries didn't know Armenian. I can guarantee you that. Now we know. So in Tachar, you have what? A Khoran. What's a Khoran? The Kern was Khoranum Ermeche to give you an answer by opening a book. Opening a book, okay, that's before Mashtots. We had literature before Mashtots. Okay, a peasant is coming in to a Kern saying, listen, my vegetables are drying out. Is there a solution? So the Krim say, okay. Then he goes to the library, which was burned, by the way. He opens the book on the Khoran. He goes in there. He of course, you light a candle to see in the dark, right? That's what we have that. We go to church and put a candle. It's all ancient stuff, which was destroyed, by the way. So he turns on the candle, he reads a book, so he gives him a charge. Do this. And he goes and does, so basically, okay. Another example, cosmos. I even wrote it for you, okay? It says Greek, it means order or world, order. Okay, that's Greek now. Well, we know there's an older language than Greek, right? Which is Armenian. Okay, cosm. If the universe is ordered, it's cosm, cosmovatsk. Yeah. Another one, mathematics. If you know this, don't say it. Okay, can you find a root word of mathematics? Yeah, it says Greek. It says the science of what? Learning. Well, no. You gotta count first, right? Well, if we're 12,000 years ago, domesticating animals and stuff like that in mathematics, we gotta know mathematics. Remember the chemists? They were chemists, right? They knew mathematics. You better be, an expert in mathematics if you know chemistry. You gotta, count with fingers first.
And then it's based on decimal system. You have 10,
Yeah.
and it's based on everything in our planet is based on 10.
10 and 60, right?
5 questions, 5 answers.
There you go. Okay, another one. World. Can you find the word for world? I tell you, I've been, having fights with people. They're saying, oh, listen, over here in this dictionary says this. And I'm saying, I get it, but the guy doesn't know my side of the story. It doesn't matter. He has spent all this time researching it. And I'm saying, okay, what's the root word of it? Root. Volort. So far, I'm talking about science, right? Cosmos, right? Mathematics, right? Star. Okay, of course, they say Greek, astro. Okay, we have astro, we have astach. So what's the problem? So basically, people are okay with astro in Greek turning into star, that's okay. But if they say astach to star, everybody goes mad. See, we're not used to it. We're not used to it. But we're bringing it back. That's why I'm saying resurrection. We got to resurrect this stuff. We got to start. And it's not only about saying it. We got to write. We got to publish. We got to talk. Feather. I can guarantee you're not going to find this on Google. It's Petur. So if all of a sudden I change F into a P, all of a sudden, miraculously, we see it. Okay, so Petur and feather. I mean, come on. Well, we got to use our imagination a little bit, right?
We don't have fur in our alphabet. We have fur.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Fur, it's a flat.
That's right. Yeah, so in other words, just because we got to hear what we say, we got to listen to ourselves. Otherwise, we're going to miss this entire universe of words that's missing. We have a big political problem. And then we also have the influx of hate that is going to come toward this way to change. Can you imagine changing the entire corpus, dictionaries and historical books? Look at the Portasar. It was discovered in 1994. Most of the historical books are still the same way. The Portasar should have revolutionized the way we look at ancient history. See? If those books haven't changed, can you imagine me coming with this way and then saying, you got to remove all that, you got to go this way. Even though this is the best logical way, I have the influx of that. On top of that, I have resistance from religious standpoint because I'm refuting what they are saying for a long time. And those religious cultural centers are funding the Armenian schools.
And Armenian schools mostly are not run by Armenians.
Yeah. On top of that, you have that. So you have a very huge political problem. The best way to do it is if I can replicate myself amongst you guys and split my pain with you so that we can guys do the same thing. And our youngsters, our age, the individuals need to do that.
Well, I have science behind me now with something.
Yeah, see the thing is, we need individuals like you, like Susan, everybody else, for them to come together. See, there's so much to talk about, but given the limited time, I'm just gonna talk about whatever comes next. Give you some perspectives. Some agree, some don't agree. Some have seen this before, but let's just go with the flow and talk about this because we need a constant refresher and also different perspective. We always have somebody new in the audience. Anyway, all of you have seen this before, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, obviously, the letters that we have from the Mashtotsian times have a predecessor. Its own predecessor, not like he went out there and then he said to the Greeks, listen, can you give me a few letters? Goes on the other side, says, give me a few. Anyway, the guy itself is being credited for putting these letters together. But I have a personal issue with that, but let's put that on the side. Well, first of all, we have no idea who he was. No idea. And they wrote about him after he died. So whatever he had in his time, nothing has remained, nothing is around. So we have a guy, his student, his name is Skorion. We have no idea who he was. Writes about his master who has passed away a few years ago. I can do that all the time. And we think that Mesop Mashtot's biography was copied from from a person in Greece about 30 years before that, from Basil. And his bio is completely similar to Master of Mashtos, whatever Korean wrote. So that's the problem number one. But let's just stick to the letters themselves, okay? So can you imagine, we're going to go back 4,000, 5,000 years. We're chemists, we know math, we build, all this architecture, and we go out there and teach people how to build things. We have a systematic language, culture. But all of a sudden, Master of Mashtos invented the letters. Now, there's an argument that says that he reintroduced it. Okay, why did he have to reintroduce it if we had it? Something happened, right? Okay, what happened? Well, obviously, everything was destroyed around 301. Why was it destroyed? Khavarich was there. And yeah. So the flashlight was there. And the thing is, we kiss this guy's hand as this religious thing, even though the guy destroyed all our culture. See, we have been embracing something that has destroyed us, and we're destroying something that gives us life. Everything is upside down, inside out. You should be sick and tired and sick of hearing this stuff all the time. How can you embrace something that destroyed your culture? For argument's sake, if your history is 13,000 years old, Christianity only occupies what? Only 2,000? Okay, what is this when it comes to percentage? So we are okay forgetting about 80%, 90% of our history. For that 10%, and the thing is, we are not allowed to even question that anymore. What do the students learn in elementary and middle school? Vartanants, right? All this, but that never happened. There's a book out there this thick that disputes that has ever happened. But nobody reads it. Can you imagine drunken elephants running toward, the Persians and all that, or vice versa? Can you imagine that? Persians have no idea that has happened. And they turn into a moral victory, even though we lost. We need to use reason, logic, and rationality for us to review all the stuff and whatever we expose to our children, because this is not an attack on your individual spirituality. It doesn't matter. This is a complete attack on how we think about things that we were taught and whether it makes sense or not. Everything you read about Master of Mashtot, it's all this esoteric, this heavenly religious view. It's not it was a normal time. Most of the people were illiterate. They were stupid and dumb, superstitious. We believe those superstitions more than the scientists of today. It doesn't work that way. We have to come in terms to what we can do as rational people and reflect what we have been taught. It's okay for us to throw bad information into the trash can. It's okay. Just because they have been saying this all along doesn't mean we have to accept it. If it's wrong, it's wrong, because it destroys this entire history. Can you imagine? This is about 18,000 years of history we're completely forgetting from, and then we start from Master of Mashtots and we come this way. Nobody even says Master of Mashtots reinvented on average. It says that he was the creator of the Armenian alphabet. Okay, what were the Armenians writing before? With what? Greek? So Tigran the Great writes a letter in Greek to his general on the other side of town. Do that in Greek. So this simple idea is very important, because it completely revolutionizes the way we think. we do this. And the thing is, it's very simple. 36 letters, I think that 36 was before and after him. 36. No, he didn't add more. No, it was 36, because if it's not 36, all the words that we go back before him will not make sense from a mathematical standpoint. It is a system. It's a mathematical standpoint. If you take the words from pre-Mashtots and then put it from a mathematical perspective, it's not going to work if all the letters are not there. So through mathematics, we can prove that these letters were the same way because our language remains intact. There's a system to this madness. There was mathematics behind it. And you can't invent this. Okay? All right, you see all these different formats of the letters? These are all over Armenia. All over. In different shapes and formats, evidently this was put together. So if we take the Armenian petroglyphs that you have seen, you can realize that the system itself and the way it's been put together is completely different from all the other regions around the world. It has a lot of abstract ideas, not like a cow or a sheep. You're talking about different
Symbols.
yeah, there's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of symbolism, and you have to have a very complicated mind with your fur underwear to sit down and do all this stuff, and and call yourself a hunter and gatherer. There's a big problem when we talk about hunter and gatherers in ancient Armenia. It doesn't make any sense. What I think is that whoever put that complex together, let's say ancient Armenian Highlanders, they were completely different in mindset from people around the area. So.
Visitors, they are tourists.
Yeah. So if we let's say consider the scenario that they were building that, you have hunter and gatherers around the area, and they were showing them what to be done. It coincides with the melting of the ice, the upheaval. Now they show that an actual comet hit Earth around that time, for 13,000 years ago. And a lot of scientists now concur that has happened. So if you have, let's say, a mile-wide comet coming at 75,000 miles an hour, hitting the North Pole, you can imagine the kinetic energy. What will happen to Earth? You have flooding. And the thing is, it doesn't need to be a global flood. What is this preoccupation with the Noah's Ark and a global flood and all that nonsense? You can have a flood around your backyard or in the small region. You can, put a boat together to go from here to there, and that's it. Why do we have to do this a global thing? Or why do we have to say Earth is 4,000 years old? Things like that. And the thing is, the majority is in that flock. They don't think outside the box. So we need to look at from a rational and reasonable perspective what really happened out there. We have all these are all in Armenia. Petroglyphs, hieroglyphs, Portasar, Germazor, everywhere. These predate even the Phoenicians, whatever that thing is. I want to say one more thing before we end. Plato was talking about something that happened 10,000 years ago. And at that time, obviously, he didn't know about Portasar and all that. It completely coincides with the Ice Age and Portasar's date and a comet and everything else. So with that hypothesis, we can say that those ancients before that travesty happened, and then the same people gave rebirth to the area. And then they reintroduced animal domestication and agriculture to the hunter and gatherers. So it's just a hypothesis, but it makes more sense if we look at the bigger picture. So thank you for your time.
Thank you all for coming and sitting this long, so for 3 hours. I appreciate your patience, and I hope we all learned something new tonight, if not a lot, but at least something. And we can take this information and drill on it and continue on and find more books and more information on the subjects and try to educate ourselves first. To educate our society and our new generations, we have to learn ourselves first of all. So let's get all the information we can, all the education we can, and then give the baton to new coming younger generation, I guess. That's the way we can do. Սիրելի բարեկամներ, շնորհակալ եմ, որ բոլորդ եկաք մասնակցեցիք այս երեկոյան, եւ հուսով ենք մի քանի բան կտանենք մեզ հետ, եւ շատ բան կա դրսում, որ մենք կարող ենք հայտնաբերել, այնքան ինֆորմացիա կա, որ մենք չենք կարողացել, մեզ չեն թողել, մեզ թույլ չեն տվել ճիշտ իմանանք, մեզ կերակրել են կեղտով, ստով եւ տխմարություններով։ Ժամանակն է, որ ձերբազատվենք այդ ամեն ինչից, մեր ուղեղները բացենք, թույլ տանք, որ մեր ուղեղի մեջ հիմա նոր լավ տեղեկությունները, իրական մաքուր ինֆորմացիա մտնի, որ մենք կարողանանք ինքներս ձերբազատվենք աղբից եւ ուրիշներն կարողանանք օգտակար լինենք։ Այդքան բան։ Շնորհակալություն։
Couple of things before you go. First of all, the justification why this is in English. There's a lot of professors out there in a lot of universities that want to hear this. And again, with the books in Armenia, where it is collecting dust, same thing with this. If we keep it in Armenian, we're going to know, but the world is not going to know, so they're going to pretend nothing has happened. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I can do a lot of these, but there's a lot of effort that puts in place that a lot of people don't show up. That's the problem. And I'm always in Indian country trying to help them too. So if we can have a bigger audience, we can find a bigger outlet. And I have years of data that I can talk about just like this without any notes. I have a lot to share, I'm telling you. There's a lot more that I have, but I just need the time. On top of that, everybody's working. Saturday is bad, Friday is bad, it's party time, Thursday and all this. So there is no good time for this. In other words, it needs to be a collective effort. If I can do that, great. Try to come. And at the same time, this was also an invitation for a debate to everybody and anybody that disagrees, including all the falsifiers out there. And I'm sure they'll hear me. There's a video out there that can hear me out. I know who you are, and they know who I am. So it's an invitation for a debate. It's a formal debate. I'll pay for the debate. It can be 100 of them, and I can be the only person on this side. So whoever is going to relay this information to them, I know who you are. You're falsifying Armenian history. And by falsifying Armenian history, you're falsifying world history. If we can save Armenian history, we can save the world history. That includes Native American history. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good night.